And welcome back, guys, to the Footy Gameday Squad podcast. I'm your host, Cal, and joining me today is Kerm as we look to continue on the AFL Gameday Squad podcast. Kerm, how are you? How was your break?
It was good, mate. It was good. COVID is running rampant through Cairns right now and the family, so there's been a few issues there, but it happens everywhere, and we're back into it now, which I'm stoked for.
Yeah, it definitely is running rampant here in Brisbane as well, and down in Sydney as well, as hence why Tom is not joining us today. So he gets to miss out on our question that I'm going to kick to you, Kerm. It's been a while since we have done one of these podcasts. We're going to continue our series today as we look into the Freo Dockers and how their 2021 went and how they're looking for 2022. Before I get into that, I want to talk to you about your 2021 AFL season. I want to hear your highlight and lowlight for the year that was.
God.
Give it to me.
Life as a Suns fan, there's always a lot of lowlights. Losing Hugh Greenwood right at the end was a massive lowlight and a massive kick in the guts, and we'll get into that in the Gold Coast Suns episode, I'm sure. As for the highlights, season's over. We can move on. So we'll consider that a highlight, and hopefully next year there's a few more. What about yourself?
Poor Suns fans. Your podcast is not too far away, and I can't wait to get into it. I do think it'll be a little bit sad at times, but I'm really looking forward to it. My highlight for the year, so as you know, I'm a Port fan, but I was a Swans member this year, and there were some awesome games at the SCG.
Yeah.
But the game against Swans beating the Cats, what's his name? Papley kicking the winner late in the game, massive snap. Crowd went crazy. I was cheering for it. It was like I was a Swans fan there. So yeah, just the atmosphere and being back at footy and sort of having that moment after not having footy and on and off for a couple of years was just awesome.
Absolutely.
Like you, I'm a Port fan. Lowlight's pretty easy, and that was us not showing up to the prelim. You know, I could take a 2020 loss when we lose in a tough game to Tigers. I can put up my hands and say, yep, you know, weren't good enough. We tried our best. Couldn't do that this year. We were awful, and it stings even now. 3-4 months later, so yeah. Again, look out for when we do that. You can see the
sadness in his eyes.
It's Port's still to come. Port's still to come, but we're going to continue on. We've looked at 5 teams so far, and we are up to Team 6 today, which is the Freo Dockers. So just a recap on how we do this. So first, we look at how the 2021 season went. Bit of a recap. Look at their highlights of the years. Talk about some stars of the years, some flops of the years. And then we move into looking ahead for 2022, which of course is going to be for the release of Gameday Squad. So later this month, we're going to launch here at Gameday Squad Australia's first fantasy sport blockchain game. And it's going to be out by the end of the month. You'll be able to open all your packs and all your players. And by the end of February, you'll be able to move your team around and start getting that ready for your fantasy season. So we can't wait, and we're here to get you ready for it as well. So, Kerm, let's have a look at the Freo Dockers this year. So
let's do it.
One of the teams that I didn't think was going to be super interesting coming into the year, I don't think Freo fans would be too upset with me saying, even though they had a surprisingly good year, and we'll talk about their grade that we give them in a second, I do think it was still a very quiet year. Mm-hmm. There was sort of under the radar, sneaky good year. You can see there 10 wins, 12 losses, and it finished 11th on the ladder. So heading into the season, people were thinking they were going to be about 14th or 13th based on the betting. So that's a bit of a nice jump for them there. They were equal odds with the Gold Coast Suns, so they were the expectations that I'm sure think about what you thought going into the start of the year.
Oh, God.
All right, we'll move on from the Suns. But for me, the highlight that I had for them, I think them beating the Eagles was for the first time in 6 years.
Yeah.
6 years, Derby drought, 15-point win, put the nail in the coffin for the Eagles. Eagles finals chances were done, weren't going to make it. Massive game, shot out to a 40-point lead in the second quarter, just blitzed them. Eagles tried to reel them in, but just couldn't get that job done. So, yeah, I would say that would be the highlight of the year. The low light of the year was what happened the week later. So they were still in the finals contention. They were playing St Kilda, and in a game that I think St Kilda were mathematically out of it the week before. So Freo still had it all to play, and Saints just blitzed them. Like it was I watched it, and it was just poor game from Freo. Really disappointing way to end the season, particularly after that massive win that they had the week before. So, do you feel like I've missed anything there for Freo? That's what I picked?
No, and it's just what they are at the moment, Freo, and that it's been sort of embedded in their culture for a little while is this inconsistency. And to blow out a rival like they did with the Eagles and then just to next week not back it up and get, frankly, embarrassed against St Kilda, it's just what they are. And it's such a shame, but they'll look to change that going forward, and we can talk about some players that can help them do that. later.
Yeah, let's get straight into it.
Yeah.
Straight into it. So we have included Tom's Star of the Year that we'll show, and Star of the Year and all this stuff here in as well. So we can talk through his, but yours is first on there. And you've gone with Andrew Brayshaw. And the reason I say about Tom's is Tom's also gone with Brayshaw.
Andy Brayshaw.
So tell us, Andy Brayshaw. So tell us why he was your Star of the Year.
Absolute leather poisoning. He is an absolute joke. Can get the footy anywhere. I think he's probably top 3 players on their team right now. He gets most of the footy, but you can argue Mundy. We'll talk about Fife later as well, but yeah. But Andy Brayshaw, he's going to be the best player at the club soon. If not, he already is. Averaging over 30 disposals a game, 5 marks, 4.7 tackles, can affect the scoreboard at times. He's going to be one of the best young players in the league next year for sure.
Yeah, that's a really good pick. I really like that. And for so long, I think I talk about Andy Brayshaw a little bit later. But yeah, for so long, I always just thought about him as the guy that got hit from Gaff. And yeah, now he's turned into a really good star of that club. So yeah, a really good player for them. And I'm sure Tom would have said very similar reasons. My Star of the Year is someone I think we've pondered when the rucks in the past, and you said we've already had Gawn and we've already had Grundy, and you said neither of them were going to be the starting ruckman that you targeted. I want to know, is my Star of the Year Sean Darcy the man that you're going to be targeting for the start of your 2020 season?
100%. I'm infatuated by this bloke. He is so good, and I can't wait to have him in my team. Yeah,
he killed it this year. I'm gonna give you some stats. So 3rd ruckman ranked overall, behind only those 2 guys, Gawn and Grundy, that we said. Now he's only 23 years old. Mm-hmm. The best average under a 25-year-old was Tim English at 88, and this guy's 23. So think about that. Under 25, the next best under 25 was Tim English at 88, and then Laddams at 80 for Port. So you can see there how many touches he gets from the footy, which has been great. His hit-outs to advantage, even though he's getting lots of ruck work done in actual, away from fantasy, he's 4th in hit-outs to advantage, which is really, really good for a guy he's 203 centimetres, but he's not a massive, big ruckman versus some of the other guys that jump and things. So, yeah, I just always think about how he's contested footy. So he's 2nd in contested footy at the Freo Footy Club. So I just imagine going in as a midfielder trying to win the footy against that guy. So big no with his big frame coming out of it. So, and he averaged a goal and a behind every other game too. So he's hitting the scoreboard. Now he did a lot of this as a forward, and when you look at how many ruck taps and stuff that I was just saying there, 4th overall at ruck to advantage. And if he did this playing ruck so much, it just shows the versatility of this guy. He can go forward, he can play in the middle, and yeah, I think Star of the Year. Congrats to him. He killed it.
I'll talk about him later as well, but I'm so excited by this guy.
Yeah, no, he's good. I'm sure he'll be, talked about by myself as well. But what about on the other side? You've given your flop there. Who to?
Blake Acres. And the addition of Acres didn't quite go to plan for the Dockers. He had seasons at the Saints averaging 20-plus disposals a game and owning the wing, killing opponents with his line-breaking kicking ability. And we just didn't see him at his damaging best last year. And it affected his fantasy average as well, only averaging a mere 77 GDS fantasy average. Not quite the year that Freo fans wanted from Acres as he came in, because he can be so good and win games, and that just didn't happen.
Yeah, and 77 points isn't good enough in Game Day Squad scoring. So if you don't know the scoring, go check it out on our website at GameDaySquad.com.au. We outline how people score in our game. A little bit different to AFL Fantasy, very similar in terms of the stats that we use. However, traditionally our scores are about 10% higher, just based on our numbers there. So a 77 is probably about a 60 in your AFL Fantasy, just so not quite good enough for him. That's a good one. Lucky Tom went the same I did with my flop of the year, and it pains me to say this because I absolutely love him.
Yeah.
And before I rip into him, I want to give you a stat that I found about Nathan Fife.
Go ahead.
That blows me away. This guy averages 0.98 Brownlow votes per game he plays in the AFL. Have a think about that.
Jesus
Insane.
Christ.
Every game he plays, he averages a Brownlow vote. Now, if you go, right, compare that to the other people around in the AFL era, no one comes within 0.1 of that, and that's danger.
That is insane.
He is head and shoulders. So I'm going to rip into him here, and I don't like doing it, and I think I rip into him a little bit later as well. So just for the record, I love this guy. I think he's been a legend of the game and one of the big what-ifs. What would have happened had this guy stayed healthy? But unfortunately, 2021 wasn't his year. I was hoping for a bit of was hoping his 2020 sort of year was a bit of sort of a, with his injuries, he'd bounce back this year. But injuries, again, were what we think about when we think about this guy now. So he only played 15 games. Even if you had him in the team there, it's pretty tough to think that a guy that you can see there 7th overall for the club is the guy that I'm giving the flop of the year. But it's just how much this guy can produce when he's on. And for me, I'm not comparing him against sort of the average player. I'm comparing him against the Tuke Millers and the Steels and those sort of guys. That's the level of footy that this guy can get and play at. Well, so, it's a shame to put him there.
Even comparing Nathan Fyfe to Nathan Fyfe. Like, he's been a premier player in the league for so long and in fantasy as well. And just last year, obviously didn't click with injuries, as he said. And, you can compare him against the Tooks and the Steels, but even Nat Fyfe, first Nat Fyfe from a couple of years ago, it's just not the same.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate. I got them down here in my notes. Just quickly, if you want to go have a look at those stats about how many Brownlow votes per game, it's actually quite an interesting list. It definitely is very top-heavy with people like Dusty and Ablett and Danger. So if you're wondering who he's up against in that sort of category, there's some pretty good names he's beating there.
Some of the league's best.
Yeah. So Tom shared the same view with me, unfortunately, with him. But now looking to our report card, I've given them a C+. So I think traditionally I've been a little bit more harsher on my grading so far. So a C+ is a pass in my eyes. It's not quite a C- scraped over the line. They did well. I think they, like we said at the top of the show, they did better than expected. But at the same time, nothing groundbreaking, nothing to write home about. They've got a couple of good players, but then also a couple of sort of things like Fyfe that still don't quite push them at that B level. What did you give them?
I gave them a C+ as well, and for a lot of the same reasons. Going into the season, they did have them finishing a lot lower than they did. But it's just more Freo stuff, isn't it? Like, not finishing out games, disappointing losses, but then massive, almost season-changing winning games as well. So it's just Freo being Freo. A lot of good players coming through, a lot of good young engine room players coming through. So exciting times coming ahead. It's just a C+ for me this year, though.
Yeah, and it looks like Tom has given them a C+ as well, so that gives them a C+ overall. I think just quickly, I probably would have given them a B- had they not collapsed in round 23, because if they'd won that game, they would have finished up near 9th, and it would have been quite a good year. But
I thought again,
I just watched them play, and it's like, it just left a sour taste in my mouth. It was the last time we've seen them play. So if we look at where that sits them now, they've been the 3rd highest team we've ranked so far. So behind Essendon and behind the Lions, but above the Crows, Blues, and Pies. So I think that's, we haven't had many good teams. We've got a few good teams to come. Like, just looking at those 6. Sorry for your fans, but the alphabet does hurt. Yep. Alrighty, Kerm. Moving on to 2022, we're going to start having a look at where we think the Freo Dockers are going to go, who we think is going to perform for them, who we want in our team, and who we're going to be avoiding. So we know how important a team's success is in determining the makeup of your fantasy team. So let's start by having a look at how we think the Dockers are going to go next year. And you can see there, I'm predicting that they're going to finish 11th, so very similar to what they had this year. I can see them making the finals at absolute best, and I can also see them having a poor year, but not quite being sort of the bottom team in the league. You see them on the curve there that I've got. I see them moving up, but not too far, stagnating a little bit. Do you think I've got that right with my prediction there?
I do. The young players like Sarong and Brayshaw, they're going to be leaning on them quite a lot, and they are still young. It's a lot of pressure to put the engine of an AFL team on the young shoulders of guys like that. And they still haven't fixed their forward line. That they're not as clinical as they have been in front of goal, and they're relying a lot on part-timers like Rory Lobb to start kicking goals for them. So they need to work out a lot of stuff. If they finish 11th again, I would not be surprised at all. But if they push for that 9th, 8th spot, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Yeah, and I think by saying 11th, I think they will get better. But I just look at the landscape around them. I think the Tigers will be better. I think West Coast will be better. I look at the Saints. Maybe, we'll get to them. But there's just a few teams in and around it that I just think will be better than they were this year.
That's true,
with not as many sort of coming back. So, I think it's sort of harsh to say that they're going to sort of sit there, but I still think they can have a lot of improvement. and make that. But one thing I will say is there is always a bolter that comes from outside the 8 that makes the finals. So and makes the not top 4. I think there's a good stat. So for example, the Swans were quite close this year, and you go back in the Lions a couple of years ago. So I think from previous shows, I think that was the Blues. But if you were to make the case that, hey, I think Freo makes the big jump, maybe not for me, but yeah, there is an argument there. Someone's going to do it, and they always surprise someone. So yeah, who knows where that'll come from. But
Correct.
We're going to move now into our 2022 Game Day squads. So we are very excited. Our teams are a few weeks away from seeing the first players in our our Footy Gameday Squad packs. So I'm super keen. I want to know who you were targeting in your best 22, and I think we've already spoiled it before, but who have you got best 22 knocking on the door, and who are you avoiding?
Yep, so it's not Brodie Grundy, it's not Max Gawn, it's Sean Darcy, and he'll be the one I want to start with my ruckman coming into the 2022 season, and I can feel the listeners, the nation, the world just rolling their eyes, but you have to remember that this is a dynasty league. We play dynasty fantasy football here, and Darcy is only 23. 16 disposals, 28 hitouts, 4 marks a game, and 103 GDS average fantasy points to go with it. Sean Darcy will be welcomed into my team, and he'll be a set and forget at my ruckman position for years to come.
I want to ask a question before we get into that. So, with how we're set up with the card tiers, if you're not familiar, head over to our Instagram page or GameDaySquad.com.au, we outline it. But the different card tiers for all the different players have different multipliers. So how high do you rate this guy? Is it someone that you're going, hey, I'm spending the money on a legend card, or I'm really going after a diamond, or is the type of guy that you'd want a platinum starting in your team? How bad do you want this guy?
I'd go diamond. And we got to remember that he's 23, and we are playing a dynasty football league, and he's going to likely, there's a really good chance, and this is what you got to keep in mind when you're choosing these different tiers, is how confident are you that these players are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 in their position. And if you can get a guy like Darcy who's pretty rock solid chance of becoming one of the best ruckmen in the league at that age, why not? Why not spend the money to go get in? So I'll be looking at a platinum card at least for Sean Darcy.
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to supply and how many packs we get open that put the cards into our game. So yeah, I'd imagine very, very lucky if a legend Darcy comes in the game in year 1, but a diamond card, very, very valuable.
You'll be stoked.
Sorry, knocking on the door. Oh, you'd be very stoked. Knocking on the door.
I got Andy Brayshaw. He's one of my first ones for this, and he doesn't make my starting 22, but that doesn't mean he won't be there eventually. For me, there are some other options in the midfield that I'll be taking over Brayshaw, and there's only so many spots. But if you were to lean Brayshaw's way, I would not blame you in the slightest. In fact, I'd probably respect it. And the other one who's knocking on my door is Luke Ryan. And he's another one who'll be in and around my squad, but not in the starting team. He's been reliable, averaging around 20 touches around abouts since his debut year in 2017. And I just want to see what happens with Young, and Jordan Clark's there now, and you can throw Nathan Wilson into the mix as well. And that's 4 halfback flankers that'll be vying for a starting spot. You can lean on Luke Ryan. I think he's the safest out of all of those 4. But we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, and with defenders, we know with some stuff coming out that will be released very, very soon, that bottom 6 defending teams score higher than any other teams for defenders. So if Freo do sort of sit around that sort of 12th or lower, then you look to see some of these guys that could really benefit of it, why they're still, not quite the matured team they are yet. So, it's a good pick. What about avoiding? Who have you got the big red line through early?
I don't want to do this, but I will be avoiding Michael Walters, and his best fantasy production in the past has come when he spends time in the midfield, and we just didn't see that last year. We didn't see that midfield time with Brayshaw, Sarong, Adam Chera was there, he's gone now. But I can't see Michael Walters at 30 being him electric self, being in the midfield, and then pushing forward to get goals. I'm going to be avoiding Michael Walters this season. He's been a very good player in the past, but I just can't see it going forward.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that one. Again, it comes down to, I look at it. Dynasty League, I know we're talking 2022, but it is a Dynasty League, and if he's not certain in your team, if you're not sold on him, then it's kind of like, what's the use for him?
Exactly.
Will he be in that sort of next team? So, no, you've got Tom's there, you can see. We're not going to go through his ones because we cover them both in mind that now you can now see. So we cover all his picks, which is good. We didn't plan this. This is just well coordinated across the board. I've got no one in my starting 22 that is wearing a Freo jersey. So I've got a couple of people knocking on the door, so exactly the reasons you said there with Brayshaw. So yeah, I really do like the way he's progressing. I do think with a midfielder though, I do want to sort of see the team get better before I fully trust him in one of my midfield slots. And then Darcy as well. So I really like him, one of my top dynasty guys going forward. But I still would be targeting a Grundy or a Gawn at this point. I'm just going after that tried and trusted ones. Mundy, I've left out.
This sucks.
Yeah, so too old for me. He's been a Warrior, but yeah, sucks to see it. And again, coming back, is he in the next time? This time, team's competing for a flag, if they ever compete for a flag for our fans. Will he be in it? Probably not. And Fife, like I said, I hate doing this, but you've got to think about it. If he's healthy, you'd think about it, but you only get so many trades a year, and you just don't want to be flip-flopping with him in and out of that sort of active squad. So it's a shame because I really do put him in that sort of Judd Ablett tier. And like I said before, massive, what if this guy could have stayed healthy? Would he have been the GOAT? Because I just love watching him play.
It's a great question to ask.
He's a beast. He's a beast. So, and every year I fear the early retirement's coming, which would be a shame.
So do I.
So.
Alrighty, listeners, so before we get stuck into the future stars of this Freo Dockers team, I've got a quick question for Callum. You had no one in your starting 22 from the Freo Dockers team. So if you were to pack a Freo Dockers player in your first packs, what can you do to get rid of these players?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when you pack these players and you get some players you don't want, there's multiple ways you can dispose of them or things you can do with them in Game Day Squad. Makes us so unique compared to an AFL Supercoach or an AFL Fantasy. So because all player cards are NFTs, you've got ownership of them, which means if you don't want someone, first thing you can do is you can put them on the transfer market and you can try and sell them for money. So you port the cards with packs just like you would a normal AFL trading card. If you don't like it, you can try and sell it to someone else. Someone sells it, fantastic, you get the money back for that NFT that you've sold. Other things you can do, there are you can delist it. So like a quick sell in FIFA, where if you've got a player no one wants to buy, hasn't played a game, not a very good card, you can quick sell and that turns straight into draft tokens, which you can then recycle for the next year's draft and potentially get your hands on some of the legend cards that are coming through in the draft and the young players coming through as they enter our Game Day Squad game. And there's other few ways as well. So there's always peer-to-peer trading, so I can trade you some cards and you can trade me cards without actually having to spend any money. And of course, one of the things we do have is we have an unlimited amount of players you can have in your squad. So yes, they might only have the 30 in your active squad, so very similar to your AFL Fantasy or any other fantasy game traditionally that you have played, where you have your team and you've got your bench and you have to make your moves within that and out of it. You can have thousands of these cards sitting on the reserves if you wanted. Now, we've got restrictions, so you can't just constantly change your team over every week. That would make it unfair for fantasy. But it does mean that if you go, hey, I don't like that player now, but you know what, there's a chance in 5 years I might, fantastic. Keep hold of him. You never know who he's going to turn out to. So yeah, plenty you can do with player cards that you do pack that you don't want to necessarily keep in and around your team or, front of mind.
Love that.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, very exciting, very exciting. If you want to know more, feel free. Contact us here on Game Day Squad. So comment on, or obviously on YouTube here. Still trying to learn what to say. Comment below. Happy to answer any questions you have. And of course, Game Day Squad, Instagram, hit us up. We're always happy to teach people what we've got because we're pretty damn excited about it.
Absolutely.
Speaking of excited,
Absolutely we are.
The one thing we are super excited is our Dynasty model. So our seasons continue from year to year. So those cards you do have, they do carry on. So Kerm, who is the player that you want to have from Freo that you want to have for years and years to come?
Okay, if I'm picking a card to hold on to in the hopes that it booms from the Dockers, I'm picking Jordan Clark. I think he can be a premier flankman and score well in the AFL Fantasy, and I think Clark has the potential to reach that top 5 mark eventually. He reminds me a little bit of former Geelong player, and we know that Jordan Clark is coming from Geelong, but Corey Enright, who loves an intercept mark and can move up the field and break the lines with his kicks. So I'll be trying to pack Jordan Clark or maybe trying to buy him off the transfer market so I can hold on to him and hope that he reaches his ceiling.
Wasn't expecting that. There was a few good...
Bit of a smoky.
Yeah, it is. I was expecting a Sean Darcy. Just the raps. I was expecting you to talk through him, but there you go.
Jordan, someone else knew.
Someone else knew, yeah. It is good that you've done that. I can see there Tom has gone with Sean Darcy. So we won't go into Sean because obviously we've gone in great detail of how much we both love him already. I think that's a fair choice. I did try and zag a little bit as well, but I only was zagged as far as Brayshaw. I know you said how, because I couldn't go past it. The reason why I want to hold on to this guy is if you look at his numbers, he gets better every single year. So he's gone 75, 78, 86, and now 119. He's only played 76 games, and he'll be 22 going into this season. So if you think about, when does a player peak? We can look into this. 27, high late 20s, thereabouts. I can see him scoring 140 in the future. I can see it. He's already kicking more and more goals, which we love on Game Day Squad. So midfielders that score goals, that's what separates the sort of the good and the great, in my opinion. For me, he's a player that I'm going out after, and really, really do want to get. And if he can have any sort of the success like his brother, he'd be very, very happy. And all Freo fans, that's all they want. One flag.
And just quietly, the way that Freo Dockers got this guy is from the Suns. We gave him the number 2.
Don't do it to yourself.
For Lockie Weller, when we could have had Andy Brayshaw.
Still stings. Guys, stay tuned for that Gold Coast one. It is going to be a spicy review. Side note,
anyway,
this family's tradition of doing the 100 hundreds is kind of mental. Have you seen that? I know they've all been posting about it. Have you heard about it?
No.
So I don't know where it started. It's something to do with the Brayshaws. Some tradition where they do 100 sprints and 100 meter sprints. You got 35 seconds to get there, and then it's like you got to keep going 35 seconds. It's like a massive beep test. I know, and they all do it. You go have a look. It's crazy. 10 kilometers.
Cool. Okay.
And I was just curious to see how long you thought you'd last, but yeah, like we said, with all the COVID bubble, I had that question logged in a long time before COVID was going to hit us. So I'm imagining COVID's going to. I won't ask you that because I don't think the answer will be to respond.
I haven't had a pre-season in a long time, so yeah, give me a couple of days maybe.
Maybe next Christmas we can see how far we go with that one.
Yeah.
Upside potential players. Now, what we look for in this isn't necessarily a slam dunk player like we've given there before. It's someone who has a lot of risk, but has a very, very high ceiling. So not necessarily someone you might go spend big money on, but necessarily maybe not someone that's going to cost you big money. So who have you got there?
I've got 2 here. The first one is another flanker, and this time it's 20-year-old Hayden Young, who really started to come into his own later on in last season and averaged 16 touches, 3 marks and 4 tackles. If he can take his touches to the early 20s and increase his marking output, and he could be a real smoky next year. And I'd like to see how he and Jordan Clark develop together, with Luke Ryan back there. But I think between these 2 flankers, Jordan Clark and Hayden Young, who are both so young. I mean, Hayden Young's only 20 and averaging 16 touches. His ceiling is so big. And the other one, he's not really as high risk as Hayden Young and some of the others on this list, but it's Caleb Sarong. He's a bit of a leather poisoning merchant as well. He loves to get the footy, uses the ball so well. He can play inside or outside. So versatile, and they love him down at Freo. They love him, so he's another one to watch, just in case he can sneak a little card on the transfer market for under the nose, or pack him early on. Yeah, I like Sarong. Sarong's a good player. Sarong's good.
Yeah, I'd be happy picking him up in an early pack, filling out my team with him. It's good you mentioned Clark, because you can see that's who Tom has there. But for me, I've gone with 2 players that have just been picked up in the draft.
I love this.
Yeah, so
I love these.
This is we've had a bit of a break from doing these, and that was before the draft, but we're now post-draft. And Amiss went 8th, and Aramis went 10th. So Amiss is a massive key forward. What I love about this guy is he's deadly accurate. Have you seen his stats? So he's 38 and 12 from set shots, and he's even better on the run. Like, if he gets a chance, he will take it. And I just want to see how he develops, because that club has been crying out for a key forward since Pav left. Now, key forwards don't always traditionally do well in fantasy, but if he's scoring lots of goals are more heavily weighted. We can see players like Harry Mackay have a big influence just purely by kicking goals. So they're ranked, you get 8 points per goal versus like the 6 in AFL fantasy. So someone that kicks goals will be a lot more influential. And then Aramis.
Do you want a quick stat for Freo here?
Yeah, give it to me.
The club was dead last in goal accuracy at an abysmal 41.9%.
There you go. Solve a problem instantly by going out and getting the best set shot in the draft. It's amazing. Yeah, we all sit there and think we can kick set shots, but yeah, it's a very, very difficult skill to do at a high level. And the other guy they picked up at 10th, so both these guys are Perth guys, which is really, really important.
Massive for them.
Surprised a lot of people when he got picked up in 10th, but this guy's a massive, big body midfielder. He's kicked 4 goals. He kicked 4 goals and 28 touches in his Subiaco Under-18s grand final that they won. Just quietly, he's built for the occasion and can hit the scoreboard when it counts. And he had some pretty good stats across the Under-18s, so it's no surprise he went 10th. I think there's a couple of really good players there, obviously with the players that they've already got. So I really want to see how they develop because I think they're going into Freo at a really good time. Expectation isn't high, but they've got a good young core. Potentially. We'll get into that in a second. There's some good young players, maybe not a core.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is probably a good place to transition into this final slide, which is the 3 to 5 year dynasty potential of the Freo Dockers. I've got them in tier 3.
Yeah.
The reason I've done this is you look at their list, and it's a really funny list where only Mundy, Fife, and Walters have played over 150 games.
Yes.
So on the surface, you go, that's promising, right? A lot of young players must be, right? Then you look into it further, and you look at the players who have played 50 games or more. But the majority of players, I should say, who have played 50 games or more are already above 25 years old. Only Brayshaw and Cox sit over 50 games while sitting under 25. Which for me is a bit alarming.
That's not what you need.
It's not quite the young team that you might think. They've got a lot of young pieces. We've spoken. I like Darcy. I like Brayshaw. But when you look at these sort of players and sort of their numbers, they've got this sort of middle players that are that should be doing a lot better than they are at the moment. And that's a concern for me. It's not a free agent destination. They've got the history of no premierships. And I just think it's going to take something special for them to be competing for a premiership with sort of this group going forward the next 3 to 5 years, particularly with some pretty good other lists out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I just keep going back to that thing where it's like, Freo are just going to Freo. Like, I just find it so hard for them to push for that top 4. Like, I can see them getting the 7th spot, but they've just never been that team since Pavlev where it's been like, oh yeah, they're a dominant team that can take out a top 4 spot in the league and be dominant. It's going to take something special from the likes of Andy Brayshaw, Sean Darcy, and you're going to need some magic from players that are a little bit less known, like Hayden Young, Jordan Clark, the 2 draft picks, Erasmus and Amiss. So they're going to need a lot to go their way, and it's hard when you're not a destination club. Trust me, I'm a Suns fan. I think you've nailed this. They can be a contender for a top 4 spot in tier 3. Will it happen? Is it likely? TBD.
Yeah. It's a shame. I do like Freo. I do like their core. It's just one of those things where you could make the case for it, but until I see it, I'm not going to believe it. It's like the Demons. I knew Demons were the best team all year. Until I saw them win a premiership, I was never going to put them as the favourite because I just didn't know any different. It's what I grew up with, so... Yeah, unfortunately for our fans, we're going to leave it at that, and that wraps us up for our review of the Dockers. So I think up next we've got the Cats. It won't be this long of a break between them, so keep an eye out on that. Of course, we do appreciate everyone who has joined us so far on the Game Day Squad journey, whether that be liking us on Facebook, following us on Instagram, or of course subscribing here on YouTube. It does really help us get our game out, and we think we've got a fantastic game to offer everyone. So if you do love what we're doing and you are excited about it, please get involved, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a subscribe, because it does go a long way in helping others and get our game out there. So, anything to add, Kerm, before we finish up?
No, just remember to get game day ready.
That's it, guys. Get game day ready. Until next time, we'll see you then.